Welcome, everybody. This is Julian from Straight From a Scientist. Today, I bring you part one of a two-part series, and this is an interview with Stephanie Martin, who is a tropical rainforest ecologist. She does really cool work, a lot of field work in rainforests across the world. So, very excited about this episode. We also talk about the recent WWF study that we will get a little bit into during the episode. And yeah, we talk about a lot of cool things, a lot of her work and her plans for the future. Also, we talk a little bit about conservation, what individuals can do to aid in the conservation efforts, and much more. So please enjoy the episode, and without further ado, welcome everybody to another Straight From a Scientist podcast. I'm here with Stephanie, who is a tropical rainforest ecologist. Nice to meet you, Stephanie, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks. Nice to meet you too.
So tell me a little bit about your research. What exactly are you doing these days?
So at the moment, I'm doing a master's. So I'm still kind of studying a load of different techniques. I'm going to be heading to Borneo soon, where there's a whole experimental site set up there called the SAFE Project. And this looks at preserving rainforest in the most kind of environmentally friendly way in relation to palm oil plantations.
Ah, really cool. So for people that don't know where Borneo is, where exactly is it? It's a small island. No, it's actually a big island right near Asia.
Yeah. So I'm going to Malaysia and Borneo. So it's split between Malaysia and somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Indonesia, maybe? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Have you been there before?
No, I haven't. So this will be my first time there. I've not been to Malaysia or anywhere like that. So all the work I've done before is it's been in Australia, Peru, Madagascar. But yeah, so this will be a new one.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to say, being a tropical rainforest ecologist, you must get to travel to really cool places.
Yeah, I've been really lucky. So
That's
some
awesome.
of them I've been kind of studying, and then some have been jobs. I mean, I had one in Spain recently, but that wasn't rainforest stuff. That was behavior ecology of wasps. But that was nice. Something
Really
a bit
cool.
different.
Yeah, very different. So right now I guess you're focusing, you're going to Borneo soon. And what are you going to do in Borneo? What kind of research are you going to be doing?
So they basically have this whole project set up, which is obviously we all know that palm oil plantations are very destructive to rainforests. So it's kind of this toss-up that there always is between pure conservation and then kind of like a practical economic conservation of, do we just say, let's just conserve everything completely and like overthrow the government and kick out all the corporations and like live in perfect harmony in nature? Or do we kind of try and take a more realistic stance of, well, if we can't protect everything perfectly, is there a way we can work with corporations or with governments to protect as much as we can, kind of while we still can? So this project in Borneo, it's an oil palm plantation, and they're looking at the kind of the smallest amount of rainforest that you can protect in these areas as like islands, but which will encapsulate the greatest number of species and the greatest biological diversity. So I'm going to be doing a few little projects there, helping to study this and trying to help the scientists out there work out where basically what species are found where and how much forest is best to preserve. And yeah, so that's what I'll be doing. And then I'll be heading to Australia for some different research on plants, which is more my field.
Okay, so you're specializing in plants. That's awesome. I have to ask you, what kind of animals do you find in Borneo? Have you done research on that, or are you already familiar with the biology there and biodiversity?
I'm not super familiar. I think there's orangutans, as we all know, are always in like the adverts. Especially with like palm oil plantations. So you can find those out there. in terms of like plants and that kind of thing. Um, they've got an interesting variety of figs.
Figs, you said
Which I'm looking
figs.
forward to seeing. Yeah, I'm not so good with animals, but I do know about some of the plants there, which will be good. Um, yeah, but I'm only there for 3 weeks,
That's
so
that's a short. Well, it's still a long period of time. That's more than most of us will go to Borneo. So
yeah,
that's
it's
awesome.
yeah. I'll try and make the most of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll be a lot longer in Australia following that. So I've got like a 2 week break, and then I go straight to Australia. So kind of Borneo is kind of like a warm up
yes, I want.
in a
Yeah,
way.
but
Yeah,
Australia. Correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I guess they don't have rainforests, or do they? No,
they do. Yeah,
they
see,
do.
yeah, I think a lot of people when they think of Australia,
They
they
think
think
dry, barren
yeah,
wasteland. Yeah.
yeah, basically, that's the entire kind of middle of Australia. But in the northeast of Australia, they've actually got the oldest tropical rainforest in the world.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, called the Daintree Rainforest,
Daintree.
and
Okay.
it's absolutely beautiful. So I studied in Cairns for a couple of years when I was younger, and I did a lot of research there. And it's amazing. It's like you're in Jurassic Park. Like if you saw like a raptor or something, it wouldn't feel out of place. It's like ancient ferns, and it's astounding. And they've got so many endemic species, so species that aren't found anywhere else in the world. And yeah, it's amazing. They've got really charismatic animals there. So they've got the cassowary. Do you know about cassowary?
Cassowary. I do not. Tell me about it.
Whenever I show people pictures of that, if you've not seen it before, I think it's a bit daunting. It's a 6 foot tall bird, and it's bright blue.
I'm going to. How do you spell this? I want to look it up right now while we're talking. So.
Cass.
Cassowary.
Yeah.
Cassowary. Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen. It's kind of like it looks kind of like a peacock, but not really.
Yeah, but it's just a lot bigger, so they're quite dangerous.
Yeah, they have like a horn. It does. This is straight out of the Jurassic period.
Yeah, so they have like really long talons, like fingernails. I can't remember. Yeah, talons, right?
Talons,
And
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, they're very territorial. So if you get too close or whatever, they'll just scratch you, and yeah, they can be quite deadly. So they're quite interesting to see. And there's lots of other marsupials. So not ones like kangaroos. What are they called?
The ones with the big eyes, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I forgot what they were called too, but I've seen a lot of beautiful pictures of them.
Yeah,
They're
so
really
the
cute.
big guys will be there. But yeah, no, again, I'm mostly studying plants. It's just my area of interest. Like animals are great, and I love them and care about them just as most people do. But
you like plants better.
Yeah, they're just way for me. They're way more interesting. It's plants and insects are kind of like a massive frontier in exploration and adventure in science. So with animals, a lot of the animal studies, they kind of focus on just looking at the behavior now. It's not super common to find new animal species. Whereas plants and insects, there's so many undiscovered species or unidentified species. And the exciting thing, particularly with something like plants, is you could find, an amazing medical cure or some incredible product which can be used in our everyday lives. Like, I mean, there's been like fungi found in rainforests that breaks down plastic, and there's been anti-cancer drugs, that kind of thing. So it's really, I just find plant studies way more exciting. Like plant ecology and plant science in general is just a really exciting field to be a part of, and they're just super beautiful and underrated, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I've actually heard of that. I mean, they're saying that we're destroying rainforests at an alarming rate right now, and that we're potentially losing all of these different plants that could be potential medicines, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so it's really scary. I mean,
it's really scary. Yeah, a lot of what medicines have came from plants? I think aspirin comes from a plant, right?
Yeah. So
aspirin,
most of the medicines do.
The most common would be aspirin, but many other, I believe many drugs are derived from plant derivatives.
Yeah, they are. So we really, really rely on them. And even things like, I mean, rubber is an example of a product we get for rainforest, but obviously that's kind of cultivated now. But it's that kind of thing of you don't really know what you're going to come across.
Yeah. But how do they do this? So they just find a plant and they say, well, this might be medicinal, and they start to extract different molecules, or how does this process work? Are you familiar with that?
A little bit. So you do get people that are, like proper plant hunters, or
Plant, yeah,
yeah,
medicinal plant hunters, right?
yeah, and also taxonomists. So they work, all kind of different people work together. So you might get someone who's a plant taxonomist who's looking at identifying, maybe like they already have a specimen, a historical specimen, and they're trying to find that species out in the wild, and then they'll go ahead and they'll collect it, and they'll take it back and they'll send it to plant biologists who will analyze it, and then maybe they'll find an interesting compound, publish a paper on that, maybe research will develop from that. So it can happen that way.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah, that's awesome. And also, I guess they look at the history of the place, right? I mean, in some countries, they have a long history of using plants as medicines.
Mm.
And now kind of modern medicine is doing rigorous studies on, previously used medicinal plants, I guess. I've definitely read some studies on that.
Yeah, there's
Really
lots.
cool.
So it's called ethnobotany. Um,
Ethnobotany. Okay.
yeah. So that's when people kind of take plants, and they're used in cultural settings to treat ailments. Um, Often there's, in countries around the world where medical care is inaccessible or too expensive, they kind of rely on people with an ethnobotanical knowledge to treat ailments. Um, so there is also kind of like an ethical dilemma there of, if we go to this place and they have this plant which they're using to treat something, is it then okay for kind of basically a corporation to take that plant and cultivate its use and use it as a drug, kind of commercially, and make money from it, because you're kind of taking the knowledge of somebody else who's already found that, if that makes sense. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like taking cultural knowledge and then you're commercializing it, but it is also for kind of curing people. But it is a profit-making business, so there is also like ethical standpoints there. And I think I
Well,
think I'm a bit,
companies have been doing that for centuries, right? With
yeah,
coffee and what is it, ginseng and all these things that we take for granted. All
yeah,
started as a cultural drink or a cultural, plant, and now like cocaine too, coca leaves, everything.
yeah. So it's kind of looking at, is it okay to do that kind of in the modern day? And I'm sure I've heard instances where kind of ethnobotanical knowledge is actually protected in some groups. So yeah, and then obviously people kind of have this kind of internal debate of like, but I quite like cures.
Yeah, well, it depends, I guess, if you have a potential cancer cure or Alzheimer's cure,
Mm,
that could be huge, for the impact of lives on millions of people. But at the same time, there are drug companies that are making a lot of money from it, right? So it's kind of,
yeah, that's the problem with it.
it should, yeah, I don't know. That's tough. I think the whole pharmaceutical industry is a little, could use a drastic change, but
Yeah.
well, let's not get into that today.
Yeah.
I think a good example of that is Peru, right? You said you did some work in Peru, and
Yeah.
I've been to Peru too. It's a beautiful place. I
Oh,
guess
cool.
the Amazons is the second or the first biggest rainforest. I always get them confused. There's one in Amazon, and I know the other one is in Central Africa. Are the biggest
Ah,
rainforests, right?
I,
Correct me.
th- I think it's the Amazon. I always thought it was.
Okay,
I'm
I
not.
know there's a huge one in Central Africa. That's
Is that
also,
the Congo?
yeah, near the Congo and Gabon and all those countries. Cool.
Yeah.
So tell me about your time in Peru. I want to hear a little bit about that.
So it was a pretty exciting time. So I'd been studying in Australia, and then I kind of finished or quit that, and I came back to England for a little bit, and I was sort of tossing up, do I want to go back into studying, or do I kind of want to go around the world, be in these beautiful natural places, and work in conservation? Um, so I decided to go to the Amazon rainforest and do a research internship there, and basically just assist with research generally to see if I'd want to do something kind of right now, conservation based and hands on, or whether it was worth me kind of going back to school and going to university and yeah, doing a degree and going into the field of science.
Yeah.
So obviously, that's what I went for. So I went out and yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, it was fantastic to just be able to kind of hike around this incredible place that I'd always wanted to go to, like my whole life. And I was kind of working in the field 6 days a week, just all day or all night, or like a mix of two. Um, and yeah, I think just being there and seeing all the incredible things that there were to see, and kind of looking at things and being like, I want to know what this does, and I want to know where it fits in and to the entire ecosystem. Like the rainforest ecosystems are just incredibly detailed and really, really intricate. And yeah, it's like the whole spider web thing of if you kind of touch one thread, it affects the whole system.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
so I spent so much time doing that, and I loved the field work. And I loved conducting research and trying to find answers. So just being out there just made me certain that I wanted to go back to university and yeah, go down the field of rainforest ecology basically, which is what I've done and what I'm continuing to do. So, but yeah, Peru is a wonderful place. I'd love to go back.
You have any crazy stories from the
um,
Peruvian rainforest? I remember I was there for 2 weeks with my dad, who also works in conservation. And we had it was just a crazy trip, you know. We met one of the shamans from, you know, the small villages, and he was showing us all his medicinal beverages and all that stuff. It's just it was a really cool experience. The mosquitoes are terrible, I know that.
I love me.
Yeah,
It's
they
nice.
love fresh white blood, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and they sweat bees as well. Like, oh,
And
sweat bees were.
snakes, yeah, they got all kinds of dangerous animals there.
Yeah, I saw a coral snake, which was great. They're
Oh, there you
quite,
go.
and that was like my first day there, so I was like, oh, that sets me
Uh,
up.
were you sleeping in the field too, or what how
I
was
was
the setup?
staying. It was at like a. It was kind of a cross between a research base and a like a tourist lodge, so it was fairly comfortable. And it was quite nice because it wasn't like a proper closed-in building, so there weren't walls, so you were just like in this bed in this rainforest with a roof over your head.
That's
Um,
awesome. My
yeah,
God.
I liked that. It was a very beautiful, beautiful camp. But yeah, kind of tough work as well because when you're working in the field in quite small teams, especially for long periods of time, it can get quite difficult, I have found. um, but yeah, I think when you kind of love the work you're doing, it's quite easy to brush everything else off.
Yeah, of course. Where's your dream place? Where would you like to work when you finish studying?
Probably the Daintree,
Really?
which is kind of boring of me because I've been there a lot, but
But you know
it's
it the best, exactly. So, yeah.
yeah, it's so far it's just my favorite place in the world. It's David Attenborough's favorite place in the world as well, so it's good taste.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check it out next time I go to Australia, which has been never, but I have
Next,
next time. I wanted
yeah,
to talk to you a little bit about conservation in general. It seems that
yeah.
we are fighting a losing battle these days, and it's kind of depressing.
So there's a whole push now to kind of have conservation optimism, because it's always conservation does tend to be doom and gloom because you're basically trying to save nature from yourself, basically, or save
Exactly.
humans. And it's very difficult. And there's no way that what I do every day doesn't affect rainforests negatively in some way, even by consuming a product, going to a cafe and eating something that's not been made sustainably, or something like that. Like it's really difficult to do, kind of on a personal level. But on the wider scale of things, there's this whole movement in conservation to start being more optimistic, because scientists and conservationists can get particularly down because you work so hard to try and protect something. You might get government protection for an area, but then locals will still log it, which isn't their fault necessarily. They got to make money and support their families and everything, but and then you also have situations where you get big oil companies, big mining companies just kind of coming in and doing surveys without permission, or maybe just having permission and then just destroying it basically.
Or
So
paying off the government to let them in. I mean,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So it's very depressing, but
Yeah,
there is a push for conservation optimism
I
regardless.
like that. Yeah,
There has been some, because it's kind of this idea of like, well, if conservationists are going like, oh, there's no point, then other people are going to think, oh, well, there's no point, like I won't invest money here, or I won't contribute my time to help, or that kind of thing. So it is really important that we're optimistic, and there has been some good news. So Amazon rainforest deforestation has actually, I think, it's slowed down, or it's at its lowest rates for a very long time.
Which is great, yeah, because it was getting destroyed. I just heard some bad news, though. I don't know if you've heard this, and I'm not sure. Don't quote me on this. I'm not sure if it's true. But I heard the new Brazilian president wants to drop the rainforest protection and kind of just sell it to the companies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
that
have heard
sucks.
that.
No,
It's really bad because
but we have, yeah, it's really bad. It sucks because they were
yeah,
doing so good.
it was going so well because they basically started enforcing the laws that were already present. There already were loads of laws for the protection and that everything of the rainforest, but it was just never enforced. And basically, once they started enforcing it, the destruction levels kind of decreased. But now that this political situation has happened and just the guy in charge just has no value for their natural resources and their green wealth, it is really worrying about what's going to happen. But I think, there's always going to be people fighting to protect it. So there's always going to be scientists, and there's going to be people native to that country. There's going to be, tribes and everything really fighting for their homes. So I think while there's always people that are going to be sounds quite dramatic, but while there's always people willing to sort of fight to protect and save these ecosystems, I think there's always kind of hope that things will change and situations will reverse. I mean, you look at stuff like fossil fuels and climate change, and that's all really bad, but it is a lot better than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
We as a kind of species are trying to take steps to reduce our negative impact on the environment, and it's sort of hoping that people will start to recognize the extreme value of rainforests, because I think people also try and kind of value them based on things like, oh, there's might be loads of medicines there which will help us, or there might be
Yeah,
loads
exactly. And a superficial value, right?
yeah, it's kind of putting value on it as an ecosystem in itself. So it's going like, this incredible, amazing ecosystem has developed over just hundreds of thousands of years, and it is so beautiful, and the creatures and species in it have a right to live and to exist with us, and we need to protect that, because what kind of species are we if we don't? So I think it's really important that people start to take that kind of attitude, rather than the sort of more selfish attitude of, oh, but there's medicines in there, or there's money in there, or there's, and there's people that live there, that's their home. It's like just coming into your city and just trashing it and leaving. It's not okay. So yeah, there's
coming in, taking what you want, and then leaving. It's give me the free medicine, thanks, bye. And it's kind of mean, yeah. But it's also crazy how just one man, a new president, can make such a drastic change in the future of a ecosystem. That's crazy.
It is scary.
What can we do as like individuals to try to get this situation, I don't know, to improve the situation a little bit? What can an individual do?
Well, it can be from something small, so trying to at least be aware of where your products come from and what goes into them, and making more sustainable decisions. I spoke earlier about how I'm going to be going to this palm oil place, which is kind of bad palm oil plantation. But if they're going to exist, then it's better. Palm oil is actually better than something like soybean plants, or that kind of oil, because palm oil plantations actually have like forest ecosystems within them, and have animals in them, whereas something like a soybean plantation, they're very low kind of bushy shrubs, and to get the same amount of oil from soy as from palm oil in volume, it takes up way more land. So even making sustainable choices of I'll have sustainable palm oil rather than no palm oil, and looking at the different types of oil or where they're grown. So you can get really into it. You could be someone that's just, I mean, I definitely have friends that are at that level of like, they look at exactly where everything comes from, and they toss up what they're going to buy exactly before they go and buy it. So there's that you can do on an individual basis. I think what an individual can do more than anything is become a scientist.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Because, I mean, if you've got an inquiring mind, if you're a creative person, you can be a scientist. So I think that it's really important that we can understand the systems that we have, and that we can protect them. And that's a really good way of doing it. And if you don't want to do that, just because, not everyone wants to do science, don't know why, but they just don't. There's amazing charities you can donate to. So the one that I donate to regularly and absolutely love is the World Land Trust.
The World Land Trust. I'm going to write that down for the show notes. The World Land Trust. Cool.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So they they basically find these vulnerable patches of land and they raise money to buy them and protect them. So they have this whole system worldwide where they just brought up all this land and are preserving it, just purely buying it for preservation's sake.
That's awesome, actually. I've never heard of that. So they just people donate the money, they save a bunch, and they just buy important pieces of land and save them.
Yeah, they just protect it. So, and they, from what I know, they monitor it quite well. So there's sometimes people kind of try and do like I'll buy it, and that will mean that a company doesn't buy it, and so I'm protecting it. But the problem is they then can't enforce that, so people will still come and log it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, it's kind of hard. I guess you have, thousands of acres of land, and how can you also have protection and police officers there? And
yeah. So kind of, I mean, if you have tens of thousands of pounds, and we're considering doing that, instead of doing that yourself, give the money to the World Land Trust, because they will. And
it's a step in the right direction. I mean, it's stopping legal logging, right, and all that, and occasionally we might have some illegal loggers come in, but hopefully that's not the case.
Yeah, and it's the prevention of just general degradation. So it's not just land that can be messed with; it belongs to them, so it's protected. So yeah, that's a very good charity. So I would recommend, if someone wants to do something instantly, that's a really good thing to do. Even if you don't have money, just fundraising for them, or I'm sure they have some sort of volunteering you can do. And also a big thing, especially in the age of social media, is just spreading awareness. Like if, for instance, what you're saying with the president, I mean, I know that there's plenty of people in Brazil that are really angry and really scared that they could be losing their, their green wealth and everything. So, it's kind of getting it out there that people aren't happy, that there's things that can be done and doing them. So whenever you see sort of a petition or a letter writing campaign, they're really important to be involved in.
Yeah, and even just, I guess, knowledge in general about the president. Most people probably didn't know that. Yeah. And the other side, we posted this on Instagram the other day about the what was it? They did a study, and then they found that 60% of the animals have been exterminated since 1970, which is crazy.
Yeah, we are in a mass extinction event.
They were comparing it to like an asteroid, the amount of, which is ridiculous.
It's the biggest mass extinction event since the dinosaurs, basically. It's
ridiculous.
And people we just don't know. Like, I mean, the other day, I put a post recently about this, actually. It's like a few bird species just went extinct, and it's barely a blip on anyone's radar, but that's an entire species that evolved over, goodness knows how many years, and it's just gone because we did that. Like, it's really sad. It was there was black-faced honey creeper from Hawaii. That went extinct. Wow. And that was endemic to Hawaii.
Now, I have a quick question. Now, we obviously have, huge advances in genetics and all that. What are our chances of preserving these species? And, let's say they go extinct, but we preserve their genetic code, and kind of like Jurassic Park style, we bring them back. I love topics so much. I really love it. And I think they did that with the woolly mammoth, didn't they? They found some. I think they're in the process. They're filling in the gaps of the DNA with this elephant DNA, and they're gonna make kind of this hybrid woolly mammoth giant elephant thing. So excited to see how that turns out.
Yeah, I think if it can be done, I mean, it's amazing. I don't know. I don't know if it should be done. I don't have any moral problem with it, to be honest, personally. Though I understand why people would, and different factors that would play into that.
Well, think of it kind of like a bank, a genetic bank. We have these rhinos in here just in case we kill all of them.
we lose the rhino. Yeah.
So we have their genetic code, and we can bring some back, and release them into the wild. But I think it's also kind of dangerous, because then you have the mentality of like, oh, I can just kill them and I have it in the bank, and if I ever need, I can just create some more.
Yeah, I think it's just the point of that as well. So with species, some of the most beautiful and charismatic, as in like popular species, they aren't key species. So they aren't species that are vital to the ecosystem. Their removal doesn't necessarily cause total collapse. Species like ants, and pollinator species, they are ones which, if they were to go, the whole world would be in a lot of trouble. So when we talk about protecting their genome and potentially bringing them back, for at-large mammals, I mean, there wouldn't really technically be much point. So you basically, when you look at the woolly mammoth, I mean, I think the point of doing the woolly mammoth thing is basically because it's amazing and it'll be an incredible advancement in science.
Exactly. It's more of the challenge, I think, and it sounds cool. So
yeah, it's just beyond that. I mean, economically, it would take so much money away from other projects where money would probably better be spent in conservation. And not only that, but if you've removed something from an ecosystem, I think it kind of depends how long it's been gone for, but just plopping something back in, there may not be space for it anymore. The whole ecosystem may have to change the way it functions. There may have been a different species which has taken up that species role now. Like, when you mess with things like that, you don't really know what's going to happen. So I think it's a really cool concept, but I think if it ever was kind of possible to do, I think it would maybe be a waste of money, basically. And I think that the time and effort could probably be spent elsewhere, personally.
Well, I'm pretty sure. I think the technology is pretty close, if not already here. I think it's something that's very possible in the near future. But yeah, that's actually an excellent point you brought up. Who knows what happens to the ecosystem when one species goes extinct? And then, another species is going to fill in the hole. And next thing you know, if you add the old species back in, it's going to cause a huge disruption.
Yeah. I think it's, what's the sad bit is that we're killing them. What we need to focus on is changing our ways as, a society, as a worldwide society, so that we aren't killing all these animals and destroying nature. We are also a part of nature. It's not going to go well for us if we do. Whereas, in terms of bringing stuff back, I think that's more of a vanity project. We actually need to really concentrate our efforts on preventing things from going in the first place.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. But I think, it might be valuable to have some sort of bank, just in case.
Yeah, like a bank, I guess.
But it has to be the organization in charge of the bank needs to be, a good organization that respects animals and plants, and obviously.
Maybe they'll engineer their own rhino army or something.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's awesome, though. Well, we'll see what happens. Let's hope that we, as a species, stop being so mean to the environment and animals.
Pretty much.
I think I have to admit, social media can be a huge problem, but at the same time, it can spread awareness very fast, which is definitely a step in the right direction. So.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, I was gonna. You mentioned keystone species. I was gonna talk to you a little bit about the bee situation. That's something that's been popular in the news, right? And, if bees go extinct, everybody's screwed. So why exactly is this, though?
So they're just a vital pollinator, basically. So they basically if we didn't have pollinators, we wouldn't have plants. If we didn't have plants, we wouldn't have mammals. We wouldn't have food. It's that kind of thing. You can pollinate plants by hand, but it's not anywhere near on the scale that you'd need it to be done on. But the other interesting thing with bees, everyone always talks about bees and no one talks about wasps, and wasps are actually pretty important pollinators as well. So we kind of
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, but wasps sting you, so nobody likes them. Well, bees do, but yeah.
I think someone kind of came up maybe with the idea of people like bees a bit more than wasps, so maybe we should just get people to protect bees instead of wasps. But no, we need to protect wasps as well. So all pollinators are really important. And even if it was down to a situation where our crops were being hand pollinated, we'd lose so many native species, and the world would die. So yeah, pollinators are really important.
So save the bees. Have you seen I have to say, I recently watched the Black Mirror. Have you seen the Black Mirror with the
I've only seen a couple.
Mechanical bees?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you need to watch this one. I won't spoil it for you.
Oh, thank you.
But definitely, I think this is exactly what happened in that the bees went extinct, and a company decided to create mechanical bees. Little Bluetooth controlled bees, I guess. and they went around pollinating like normal. And then obviously things go wrong, so I won't say anything else.
Oh, I'm gonna watch it tonight.
But it's definitely worth watching. And that's for everyone. Well, Stephanie, it looks like we're running out of time. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have anything you want to shout out? Any websites or organizations besides the World Land Trust, which I think is really cool?
Yeah. Well, that's my main one. One of the things I like to point out at the moment is that there's a big flying fox cull in Mauritius at the moment of an endangered species of flying fox, and they cull it because it's considered a pest. But this is actually the third cull in 4 years, and the species has gone from vulnerable to endangered within that time. So there's kind of a letter writing campaign at the moment to the Mauritius government, and if anyone wants to do that, if you go on my Instagram, which is Forest Lady Steph, there's instructions on who you can write to and what you can say, so that we can try and prevent this cull.
Okay, so it's like a petition.
Yeah, well, it's not a petition, but it's a letter writing campaign. So there's people you can email.
Campaign. Okay.
There's instructions on where you can find a template. And yeah, because this species is at risk of going extinct very soon. So yeah, that's something I'd like to raise awareness of, because it's not really being talked about that much in the media for some reason. So,
okay. Yeah, well, definitely we will throw that in the show notes and see if we can't get a bunch of people to write to these
that'd be great.
Officials. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. Really cool. And yeah, like she has amazing Instagram pictures, so everybody go follow her. They are really cool. And she'll probably have a bunch of amazing pictures in the future because of her awesome travel plans. So definitely excited to see and hear from you again. Maybe we can chat in a couple months if you want. You can come on again and we can hear from your experiences, hear about them.
Definitely. And so I've just set up my YouTube channel, but I'm about to launch a website as well.
Awesome.
So the YouTube channel just talks about all kind of different natural science topics. My upcoming video is going to be about this flying fox situation, and yeah, I'm going to have a website to go with that. So yeah, I think that the best thing, if anyone's interested in anything I've spoken about, if you go on my Instagram, and there's all the kind of information there.
Yeah, it's really cool. Well, thanks for coming on again. We'll definitely throw all that information in the show notes so all of our listeners can go on and follow you and do all that cool stuff. So thanks for coming on again. Look forward to hearing from you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Sweet.